Spencer, how are you, man?
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. Just a couple minutes of conversations, and I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. I don't know how different parallel paths we have, but it sounds like life and entrepreneurship has gotten us both. So for the listeners, man, I was just telling you, Spencer, like I don't pick up a lot of the brokerage emails because of the podcast people reaching out, and I saw your little cliff note, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think Spencer has got some stories to tell. So where do you usually start with these, man? I mean, I know you're doing real estate now. You can maybe give us a little bit of a highlight of what you're doing right now. Yep. But it sounds like it's been a couple zig and zags to get to where you are, which I think we'll be able to peel apart.
There have been a few zigs and zags. I don't know how many of each, but
full circle, right?
Full circle. No, I'm just really honored to be here, Brian. I mean, I think, as we briefly chatted before we kicked off here today, a lot of potential parallels. And so we can probably wax philosophical about the meaning of entrepreneurship, parenthood, balancing all those things all day. So I'm based here in the Bay Area, California. I was born and raised, didn't spend all my 40 years basically here. I've lived abroad, not just a total delusional Californian, as many folks think, although I love it here. And so I wake up every day and I'm just feeling very grateful to now do what we do, which is like I actually serve the members of our passive investing club, basically.
That's
so
awesome.
Full-time passive investor. We do focus primarily in real estate, but not just real estate, like big apartments and self-storage and stuff. That wasn't always the case. I wasn't always a, work from home, scale a lean business kind of guy. I frankly grew up playing in punk rock and metal bands. And I thought,
oh, no way.
Yeah. I mean, hence like,
what'd you play?
I still play some guitar. I don't really play a lot of very heavy, scary stuff anymore, given the fact that young kids are, but still try to pick it up sometime and have some fun.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. I mean, and, all the way back, Cliff's Notes for me would be grew up in a household that was actually like a real estate household when dad was a broker, entrepreneur, for about 30 years.
Residential, commercial, or what?
Residential. I mean, he got so scaled up, so big, so successful in the 90s. He hit the point where he was doing one of the top 3, top 5 brokers in the country.
Whoa.
Because he was working in these really, really affluent markets. And so technically, I guess my introduction to that in that real estate world was at the age of 6. I don't think that really counts for meaningful learning. But he made me do open houses. He made me clean out properties for renting.
That's
later
awesome.
on, all those odd jobs. I know you and I talked about the parallel journeys of getting pulled into the world built before us, and all those learnings and scars and education we get from that. But I got scared into tech companies. I mean, that's really what I got tired of telling all my friends, hey, I can't hang out. I got to go work on some real estate stuff for my dad's business. I'm grateful to have gotten all that education, but I went into a 13-year career in tech companies. And
did you go to school for tech then, Spencer, or like?
I originally started doing some computer science engineering stuff in high school. Ultimately, I got to college, went to University of Colorado in Boulder, go Buffs. And in the first year, I discovered snowboarding, and not necessarily.
Man, I almost went to. I looked at multiple places in Colorado, and I don't think my life would have been as productive. I can guarantee I'd probably still sit there on the chairlift with a couple pennies to pinch together, and that's about it.
Yeah, and ironically, it just has to be said. I actually haven't been like a real drinker. I love a beer, but I haven't been a drinker for 15 years. In college, I definitely discovered beer. And so all those things, snowboarding fun, took me away from engineering and tech. But it came back around post-college. And I never thought of myself as like a leader. And I didn't want management role responsibility. I was always curious why people did. Because it just doesn't draw me, right? And ultimately, I got into a inside sales and support job, stumbled my way up through, somehow discovering a work ethic. Because I got good mentors along the way to kick me in the butt and teach me the hard way sometimes. And ultimately, I was leading a team of about 200 people at the age of like 26, 27. Very parallel kind of time horizons, I think, when you got thrust into leading and taking on big stuff, it sounds like, from your journey. Way in over my skis, just like...
Bored. Come on, bored. Way over your board.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Thank you. Figure out the skiers, but I probably should say that more honestly. Yeah.
Just kidding.
It's true. Way over the board. And then I ended up sticking around in the finance tech world for that whole career. So it was like Intuit was the first big company I was doing that at. TurboTax and QuickBooks, and then I went to progressively smaller companies because I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. And the word entrepreneur didn't even exist yet. Uh, now people say that pretty casually, but like honestly, I literally turned down multiple different, two different very big promotions and pay raises to jump to smaller companies that I knew I would be working more, but learning faster.
I was gonna say, what was your draw? Like, what was the thing that you were solving for?
I think at the time it was honestly just trying to find meaning in the work while also connecting and helping and growing people. I mean, I got very deep into the leadership and development stuff, into like I cherish that, managing and growing and trying to be there for a person as like a servant leader. That is so much harder done in practice than it is talked about in a book. And I think that's ultimately what drew me.
So you've already said that you didn't want to be a manager and leader and you were confused by people did. Then you just described how you love doing that. And then you were managing 200 people. What was it? Was it one of your mentors that got you, exposed to this? Like, what was the kind of the transition point where that you figured that this was something that you liked?
Yeah. Thanks for catching that. I mean, it actually was, it was two mentors who I still know today. And one of which in particular has become like a very like a best friend, basically over lifelong. And, I didn't really put a lot of stock in the value of all this leadership management stuff, as I said earlier, but what they really connected for me was like the benefit that a leader in the right moment can serve and delivering feedback that most are unwilling or really unwilling to give candidly with a nice wrap of compassion can fundamentally change someone's life without being dramatic. And I think when I first got to taste that feeling of like, oh, wow, that person that I work with, who I've been sitting there and like putting the work in with and trying to be a good resource and support system for as their manager in this company, they're thriving. Doesn't always happen that way, far from it. Sometimes it goes quite the opposite way because that's what management's all about is you have to get through some tough stuff. And sometimes you don't always connect with people. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. So I don't want to make it sound like it's all unicorns and rainbows because it's not. But when it works, it's a beautiful thing. And it's like that connected with me in such a potent way that it was like, okay, maybe all this business stuff isn't a bunch of crap. Maybe this is something about people connecting with other people. And ultimately, there is a much more powerful lesson behind that. And as I don't know, from 0 to 60 on the philosophy, but like he took me there. And I think that this is probably my why on the people leadership front. I look back at the W-2 world. And just to say briefly, Ryan, on the entrepreneurship community, and certainly in the real estate investing community, I'll say there's a tendency to kind of like rip on the W-2, like to rip on full-time careers, to rip on people who are like traditional corporate climbing of ladder. And that wasn't my experience. Like I have no bone to pick. In fact, I cherish that journey. But eventually I was like, I think I've seen enough. It came to a kind of a, call it a fuse light moment or like a linchpin moment. About 10 years into that career, I was at the most intense unicorn, call it like early stage startup company, tech company worth over $1 billion at the time. They're still thriving and doing well even now. But like in that moment, early stage companies working, 80 to 100 hours a week in an office, not including email time on nights and weekends. Not seeing my firstborn.
I don't know how people do that.
I couldn't anymore. I was like, something's got to give. And I've learned enough here. There's got to be a better way. And so ultimately, that was much more than you asked for, but it's sort of going to.
No, I think it's insightful, man. Because part of the whole reason I love this show is like, why are people doing what they're doing? It's just like, because you can go and say like, hey, here's what I did. But like, why did you do that? I wasn't in your head when that happened. Right. And so that's interesting. When you were feeling a trap, Spencer, like where were you turning to start exploring different ideas?
First place to stop was the mentors I had already referenced earlier, along with a couple new ones that you pick up along the way, these connections that you make. People that are either mentor can mean so many things. The folks who are 2 to 3 decades out from us, they have grayer hair than I have now, even though I know we both have young kids and it's amazing how fast this is accelerating. But you've got the folks that are further out, 2-3 decades. But then you got the folks who are maybe like 5 to 10 years out. The ones who are walking a different path and entrepreneurship path. And that's really the light bulb moment, I think, for me, was I ended up getting into my last W-2 company that I was at. I was pulled in by that same early stage mentor that helped me many years ago, ironically. And it was going into a company that was actually populated by folks who are working on real estate investing, helping fix and flippers. And I don't do fix and flip stuff now, but this was like my first entree into seeing, wow, a lot of my coworkers, even some of the people I'm managing at this company, and the company it's called Kiabi. It's still out there. They're kicking butt. Not a paid promotion or anything, but just like, I was managing folks younger than me who were going out and doing entrepreneurial stuff, building businesses on the nights and weekends in the company. And I was okay with that. I love that fact of that growth. I love companies that encourage the side hustle. They encourage innovation, entrepreneurship. As long as people take care of their core responsibilities, they go do what they do. So every night, I remember this distinctly. Every night, the lights were going off for the rest of the office. I was leaving. It wasn't like I was leaving at 10 o'clock at night or anything. I don't want to make it sound like I was working that hard, but it was, end of the day. And a few of these direct reports were sticking around, and they're staying in the meeting room, and they would stay there for hours. And I was sitting there going, these guys kick ass on their day job. I know, because I'm their manager. I see how they do. Then they stick around, and they're working on something that gets them excited enough to go and do this every single day of the week. And then they go and do it on nights and weekends. And then they come in the following week, and I see on their hands scrapes and bruises and scars from literally doing like peeling popcorn off the ceilings from old buildings that need to get flipped. And I'm like, I can't swing a hammer, so I have a ton of respect for what you guys are doing. I'm glad you're good at it. I ain't touching that. It was inspiring. And it was also taking away that veil of like, I think what stops most entrepreneurs short, and I'll speak for myself only here, Ryan, is I can't go do X because that's not who I am. And that's, you and I both know, that's a bunch of BS.
It's a false narrative that someone created.
Such a false narrative. It's a perfect way to categorize that. And so like, ultimately when I saw that, I was like, I know I'm at least as capable as these guys, because I know we work together, and like they have strengths, I have strengths, but I can go do something. And so that's where I got the bug. And I started reading voraciously. I read way more than you should read. I read like 24 books in that given niche in like 18 months. Little over the line, maybe obsessive. In hindsight, would have done like 3, maybe 4 books. It becomes procrastination after a while. Listen to a ton of podcasts, quality ones just like yours, Ryan, and like just immersed myself in that. And I was doing 4 to 6 a.m. working sessions before doing the waking up, doing the kids stuff, prepping the day, saying hi to my wife and co-founder Jennifer. And ultimately that was that hustle period where like my fuse got lit, because it was like, wow, other folks here are doing it, and they're all really smart, but there's nothing stopping me besides just the willingness and curiosity. And so that was probably more than you wanted on that.
No, I always find it interesting, like what gets people to do the hard work. And honestly, Spencer, like one of the things that I love about the program that I've created, it's kind of like underneath like my drive is like, why are people doing what they're doing? Truly, I just want to know, like, because I personally believe, from my own experience as well, is that if you explain to me the goal and like a multidimensional nature of that goal and why it's important, I'll bang my head through every single wall along the way and eat glass or whatever it was, because it's got a reason for it.
Yes.
And I think so many times people wake up and they're like, I think this weird feeling of paralysis or anxiety actually comes because their actions aren't tied towards like a goal or a purpose.
They're spinning, right?
Yeah. Like why? I'm like, I don't know. Why are you doing that? I don't know.
And it's even if what I've experienced, and maybe you have as well, but like speaking for myself, is that the why, if it's a soft why, if it's not the why, and then it ain't going to cut it, because there's times that are just simply, the journey is absolutely worth taking. But if the why is too soft or not formed enough or not authentic enough to oneself, it will not sustain someone all the way.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
I mean, and then that's been my experience. And so, and every stage of life is going to need a different one. And so to give some concrete numbers to some stuff too, like Jennifer and I remember a distinct weekend. I said, hey, can we have a planning session? And we'd never done this before as a couple. Like Jennifer had her own career. I had my career. We were still in those careers. This is like around like 2016, and things were fine. Like we were making good income on W-2, but we were working that way. I was working that way that we described earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gotten the bug, started to study, and I was like, okay, we need to figure out how to get some more income streams coming into our lifestyle that don't require the broker style income that my dad generated and the active income that you and I are both generating, Jennifer. So what would that take? We walked out of this weekend and there was like sticky notes all over. It was,
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
I mean, it was confusingly professional.
I've been trying to get my wife to do that.
On.
She's just like so like mechanistic, and I'm like, no, like this is how we do it. And she's like, I don't know if Jennifer feels the same way. Obviously, she's your partner, and co-founder. But Megan's just like, I'm so sick of being married to a planner.
I mean, we are both. Oh man, there's a lot of parallels here. I'll say that both Jennifer and I are very planners, but very different sides. Like I came from operations and growth and business stuff and sales, and she came more from like marketing expertise, operations and that side. So when we come together, you get a little bit of that quintessential
yin and yang. Right.
Two sides of the growth. But all that to say, the single unifying thing that we walked out of those sessions with, after laughter, cycles of laughter, tears, intense connection, rinse and repeat that for the entire weekend over and over. We walked out with like 15 years was the number. It said from 2016, let's give ourselves the no excuse time horizon goal. We're going to say 15 years. Let's phase this out. When can we replace our current income from our day jobs with a concrete monthly income number? Did all that. And then we realized about 2 years in, we have to chop that number in half. It's just too long. It's just too long. So we chopped it in half. Said to 7 years, let's hit this number of dollars per month income, fully passive, where we don't have to pick up a single piece of paper, do any work actively for a W-2 job or even consulting. How do we get to that number in 7 years? And 5 years later, we had actually around 5 years later, we actually hit it. And it was, I mean, it's a labor of love, it's, but I just wanted to share that because that's the level of candor and planning and why, because I wanted to be a more present dad. I mean, like, I wanted to be there for the kids, which I am now, in a way that, like, we were just talking about right before sitting down here with you. I was dropping off our younger boy at school after taking him before that too.
Yeah, you get the luxury of doing. Yeah, you get the ability to do that. Yeah. What were some? Yeah. What were some of were there things? I know there were like in the bio thing that was sent over. There were some personal things going on. I don't want to disclose anything that you're like. What were there other personal things or like things in your life that were driving you to have that level of freedom? Because you can live below your means of the W-2 or whatever it might be, but like, what were other like driving forces beside, or were there? I guess is the right question.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you going there, Ryan. So to keep it concise, I'll say yes. Back in the day, when my dad was sole provider for our household. As a kid through teenager years, working in his business, that was, we all have our parents as a model for.
I was just gonna say for better or for worse, man.
and none of us can escape that, and because we're wired that way, right? And so, I saw my dad waking up at 4:30 a.m. and building this business over the course of years that was flying high. Family was comfortable. Then we got hit with what we kind of call like the dark decade. This. Lost my younger brother to cancer when he was a teenager. There was like a series of really like near comical and tragic, like dominoes, like car crash, grandparents died right after that, blah, 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 blah. And, everyone has hardship, and I don't want to, make it sound like this is like a tiny violin story, but it was a hard decade. And I think that had a financial ramification, and the financial ramification was, when there's a sole provider in a company or a business or a household, that is active income. And that active income can either dwindle or go away. And it dwindled a lot. And it dwindled. And this is a story that is a ultimately recovery story, of course, but like, because my dad ended up doing great later on, but that was a long recovery, man. And the learning for me as a kid and then a teenager witnessing all this, living through all this, watching my parents struggle through that was, you can't assume you're always going to be capable of delivering on that active income as a household and provider, and building a moat. Like, how could I build a moat now that I'm a dad? And I was building that career for myself for 13 years. Jennifer doing it for 13 years in her own separate career. We felt doing great. We were building maybe 1-2 active income streams, but was it de-risked, to use that term? Like, de-risking our life? Was it building a moat around, God forbid I get hit by a bus life hits you, and none of us know in what way. And so I think the smartest thing that ever Jennifer and I could have done for the sake and safety of our family was to start having these conversations about, like, let's build a moat. Let's play financial offense. Let's go grab the reins and start making some decisions about adding income streams that come into our household. Doesn't have to happen overnight, doesn't have to be perfect, but we just need to start. And that's ultimately what I get passionate about now, man, because we did this ourselves with the help of smart people and supporting partners and mentors galore. But now I get to wake up every day and help other people try to, essentially do the same thing if they're spinning in that same machine and they don't really know which way to get out.
It's so helpful, man, because like I see that kind of variation of that story many places. So like my wife's she has a W-2 job, and like she's got all these ideas too that like eventually, and there's so many questions inside of this but I'll try and keep it concise. But so there's the W-2 people, like the story that you had shared, that I see that from friends and my wife and whatnot. But then also, what I see a lot too, Spencer, of the people that are listening in, call like anywhere between a few $1 million and a couple $100 million privately held business. I mean, obviously the bigger you get, the easier, and I don't know if that's the right word, but easier it is to have enough cash flow to hire other people. So that way it becomes more passive. But like, there's this like death valley, I think, between a few million and like the 10, 20 million, where like my dad and I say, I mean, I'll just use our story. We what I call is we solved for annual income, Spencer. So it was a lifestyle business. It was how much in salary, perks, and distributions can we suck out of this thing, not realizing it was an asset. But like what there's this possibility of in our training program, we've got these 3 financial targets and principle 2 we talk about, where the second one is, when can you be free while you own your company? So it's actually, you have enough in distributions that are passive that you can then hire a CEO to replace your job, but maintain your distributions.
Yes.
Because, dude, you're right. Like, I really resonated with your story, because my dad is a $20 million business, but it was an active job with 115 assistants. I mean, they were all wonderful people, but like, I mean, the machine breaks, like the family's not fine. Like, it's like, we got boats and cars and cabins. And like, I mean, it was just like a full, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it wasn't a freeing situation. There were people that were probably janitors that made more money, had more money, like liquid than we did.
Right. I mean, that is a really interesting question. That first, the question that you shared, it hits home for sure, but also the active job with all the assistants, because ultimately I really do feel that this is one of those memos that I hope more folks get earlier to learn from your story and your family story, and hopefully our conversation amongst the much other education you're providing folks as well, Ryan, because now more than ever, I mean, the context of this discussion and time in the market is so
isn't it?
Yeah, it's remarkable, right? Because people, I know everyone's excited starting back in COVID, right? 2020 was the first year where it became cool, so much, so prevalent, so prominent, and so brandable that people started to brand it. And they started to say, hey, let's go do the side hustle, make it the full hustle. And they started to do it. And now then quiet quitting. And now it's much rougher, because you're getting, particularly in technology, you're seeing the waves of layoffs and all this. And it's not to get grim. It's more to help people think through, when you're building something new, what do you want it to be? Are you beginning with the end in mind? And that's it. Like, that's really it, because there's people such as yourself who can actually help framework that and help understand, are you building an asset, or are you building something that you can exit? or are you building a job? And it's fine if you are, but just know
you just nailed it, Spencer. Like, I don't care what people do, but it's like, there's this whole like, I don't know where the hell I saw it, Spencer, but it's like, so if this is reality, so the listeners, I've got a hand that's on the bottom of the other hand, but this is reality and this is expectations. The gap, the bigger the gap, the more unhappy you are. You want to shrink it and get them correlated, right? Like, I don't don't suck all the cash out and expect to have a big asset. Or like, to your point about like the anxiety that I think a lot of people feel is because they haven't thought through this. So I'm curious, when you and Jennifer were sitting down and you're walking through your guys' plan, did it start, or was it just financial? Were there other personal things or lifestyle things, or where you want to spend your time, or like how multidimensional did you guys take that long-term goal?
This is such a timely topic too, because think of it like a phase 2.
Because like almost year 7, right? So you guys hit it and you're trying to probably come up with some new goalposts.
Yeah, because no one tells you that, what's that wonderful quote that really summarizes it better than I'm going to hack John?
Hack it. Who cares?
Wherever you go, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah. Wherever you go, there you are. And what that really means is like fulfillment. If you take care of your financial needs, and most people, this is not a delusional comment, most people, I hope they get to the point that they can ask this question, that they're in a stable enough place to ask this question. Assume all of your financial needs are met. What reason do you have to to step out the door every day and do stuff? Once they get there, it's kind of like, I want the chance to fight that battle. And I hope everyone here does. And I hope that they get there, because that first conversation with Jennifer and I started with an exercise 10 years ago and 15 years ago, I would have thought was pretty corny. And now I think is vital, which is vision board. Got it. Vision board, man. Vision board. And like, I know it has a lot of words. I didn't even use it that way at that time. I just built my ideal day. And my ideal day, simple as it sounds, not rocket science. And I know that you're familiar with these concepts already, Ryan, but just to play it out the way that Jennifer and I did at that moment, I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to wake up. I want to connect with the people I care about, my family, and like with my boys, with my wife, and whatever that happens to mean. I want to be healthy, and part of being healthy means I got to get exercise somehow. And then you get the idea. I want to have some fulfillment as well by being able to connect with people, like friends.
Ideally, not sleeping at the office, like actually hanging out with people I want to.
Not sleeping in the office. And I want to be able to provide something of value in the world, whatever that happens to mean in terms of work or contribution or doing something. Whether keeping that broad is helpful, and then self-fulfillment, maybe a hobby like playing guitar, because I still love doing that. And so ultimately, that was it, man. And like that fed everything down from.
What I love about that, though, Spencer, is like, and I've been playing around with this idea of like, so like you have financial freedom, which obviously is a thing, but then the point of money is to allow you to do what you want to do. That's it. Right. And if you really think about the common denominator, it's like you have 168 hours a week and so do I. The great equalizer. And then it's like, what do you want to do with that 168 hours? And what do you want to think about? And who do you want to be with? I mean, it's like, that's it. I know, right? But it's like so fascinating where it's like, I just read this book, Psychology of Money. I don't know if you've seen that book come across.
Oh,
I know. And I was very resistant because it kind of looked like a Main Street, another money book. And I was like, I don't know. I've read so many of those. I don't know if it's going to be different. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. But what you just said kind of correlated with, there was a point in this book where he was explaining all these ebbs and flows of different people that are billionaires that lost it all. And then there's the janitor that lived below his means and he died with $3 million. And he's like, the whole thing is just time. He's like, there's like your necessities. Yes. And then he says like necessities plus. And then there's the comfort ones, and then there's entertainment and travel, and then anything else is above that is ego. And I was just like, so fascinating. But it's just to engineer the ability to have, like, if you don't have the finance, I guess here's where I'm going with this, Spencer, and I'm interested to hear how this has played out for you, is our first two principles in our material is what's your vision, and then what's your financial targets, and they're almost like correlated directly. It's like two sides of the same coin, because you need the money to have the freedom, but then at some point it doesn't matter. And then it's like, truly, what kind of experience do you want? And I think most people that I see, Spencer, struggle with that latter part, which is, what is the experience? Like your point about like walking out the door. So like, what process or how did you figure out what your underlying purpose and identity was outside of a business entity or your business card?
Oh man.
I love this shit, man.
I absolutely love this stuff because I feel like it's so incredibly under discussed in pragmatic ways. And I think the fact that you've got those two as like the feeding questions, starting with the top, going into the financial, completely clicks for me, right? Yeah, and it completely clicks for me because the first thing that I think helped me, just to call this out before we get to like the purpose, is like demystify, like remove the stigma from money. And like you said this earlier, it's like money's a tool, right? Like it was, you said so many incredible things in a row right there. I'm like, I want to bite on all of it, but like I'll be thoughtful in where I go. If you look at money as like chasing money, or if someone's internal monologue says, I think money is bad because people who want money are greedy, already,
Right.
none of this is going to work. None of this is going to work. And because someone has to sit there and wrestle and reframe what is their relationship with this thing that is money, whether it's a dollar or whether it's a credit card. Like, money's a tool, and it's simple, and I wouldn't overthink it beyond that. And I just love the way that you phrase that, because once someone accepts that, just like a hammer, maybe the laptop you're using on your end, these are all tools. Money's
Can I pull on that? Because there was because I don't want.
Absolutely.
Well, and I don't want to interrupt your train of thought too much, but it's like this concept of like money is just completely neutral. It's like the whole like the hell was the precedent in the law, where it was like the knife. You could either use it to put peanut butter on it or kill someone. But like it's truly like it's the intent.
I think that is the money a means, or is the money the end? And I think that some folks, if you had asked me when I was, maybe 25, and I mean, at 25, you were navigating, like leading a company through with your family and stuff. So like really big challenges, massive learnings, which I assume were deeply formative to you coming to this place where you can now help others achieve and break through that.
Money was scarce though, Spencer. So like, honestly, I've had to completely beat that out of my head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I think it's so funny nowadays because like, I mean, we couldn't get financing. I mean, it was right after the crash and all that other, I mean, you guys and your dad, I can only imagine some of the stuff you guys dealt with, but like, I mean, I'd asked like the Buffalo Wild Wings like waitress, "You got any capital? Because I need some money for payroll." And now I get done with the podcast, be like, "People, you need any money?" I'm like, "This is so ridiculous." I mean, I couldn't find $2 10 years ago. So I think that no matter what, that you're like, to your point, it's imprinted in your brain, and then there's this weird relationship that you need to address at some point.
Yes, and I mean, the phrase that I don't know where this came from, but it's the one that I remember writing down in around like 2016 when I got the bug, and I was like, "Hey, we're going to change this. Like we're completely breaking assumptions, and we're going to go figure this out." And it was how to take the money question off the table. Just like, how do I take the money question off the table? Because let's assume I live in a world now, magically wave the wand, and money is not a problem. What would I do? And that would be the first thing. Like, I honestly think that, like, I hadn't really thought about this phrase until our conversation here today, Aaron, in years. Like, how do I take the money question off the table? And like, if I hadn't wrestled with that first, I don't think I would have like gotten to the point where I'm like, well, what's my purpose now? Let's go do a vision boarding session as a couple, and let's like really get into it. Like, why do you want to spend your days that way? Why do you want to spend your days that way? I don't want to spend my days that way. Why do you? But maybe you can spend your, because if people's relationship with money is, in my 20s, I thought I need enough money to pay off credit card debt because I had some, and and going through that we didn't mention that earlier, but yeah, I mean, I had substantial credit card debt because I had a lot of fun by choice, even though I had saved up money, went and spent it all in my 20s, got way in the hole, came back out of it over years alongside Jennifer, and we both got out of it together. Then the question was, wow, we got these careers. We're doing well. There is money. Hence all the working too much and not really seeing a way out of it. Now it's a question of like, how to take that money question off the table indefinitely. And then,
yeah, I love it.
Like, what's the world that we live in? Why are we still here? And that brings us back to the question of like, how to form that purpose for me, right? And I really appreciate you going into like the relationship with money topic, because ultimately the purpose, I think, for me was like, take care of oneself. You can't serve others until you can make sure that you can take care of yourself sustainably. And I think use the airplane analogy. You got to put your oxygen mask on first. And as corny and dramatic as that sounds, I really do think that people need to think about that before they want to go out and be more charitable in the world. Even is like, the best good you can do is free yourself up to live your highest and best purpose in life. And then you can go and do that for other people too. Don't get it twisted, and don't judge other people for going out and trying to find financial prosperity. You have no idea why they're doing it. But my 20s self didn't have any real capital to be able to sit there and think about these things. I was just trying to have enough to pay off debt, and then eventually got there. And then it was like, oh, let's go save up some more. And eventually it's like, well, let's just go level up to the point where we can find ways to serve others better. And along the way, we can help some folks, you know? So that was,
What do you think is what allowed you the oxygen mask, you know, you help yourself first. What allowed or what helped or enabled you to realize that was a truth, like a universal truth?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if you went through this at all, Ryan, yourself, but I guess, gosh, no one's ever asked me that. I think you have to bottom out a few times.
I'm laughing because amen to that, man. Like, yeah, well, I skinned my face and broke my face. And yeah, no, I that's how I figured it out. I don't know. I've been watching, you know, train wrecks of relationships and, you know, different things all over the place going, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I honestly can't think of any other key reason beyond experience is the best teacher, and it's not a forgiving one sometimes. And
it is not.
Because if I get so kicked in the teeth, figuratively, that I cannot show up with a net neutral, ideally positive attitude every day, most days, I'm not a robot, but like most days for my family and my kids, you know, and like role model the type of human being that I want them to be. Well, then why the hell am I here? You know, and so, but I couldn't learn that unless I went and totally royally messed it up before. The same goes for the career. Like, you know, having to take off more sick days than I want to take because I was, you know, drinking too much coffee and working 18 hours a day in an office, you know, like these are all things that sound so simple and easy to just like for folks to probably hear and be like, yeah, that does sound like a bad idea. But I would challenge anyone who was listening to that going like, man, you know, if you haven't hit that point yet, tell me what you're doing. If someone out there has figured out how to not bottom out and they're working that hard in one direction, then like I would love to know what secret sauce they're using, man. I haven't figured it out.
I hear you, man. And like it's I'm personally burnt out from people that love to give advice these days that haven't bottomed out. You know what I mean?
Like they never have.
Yeah, I mean it's I think one of my favorite quotes recently, Naval. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Naval, he's a Silicon Valley guy, but
yes.
What the hell is it? It's like How to Get Rich is the name of this like Twitter rant, and it's like 3.5 hours, Spencer, on YouTube. And he goes, I named it How to Get Rich because no one would have clicked on it if I didn't name it that. And it's literally just 3.5 hours about just do the right things, take care of yourself. I mean, it's just like all like basic advice.
Yes.
But one of the things he said, he's like, I'm telling you all this stuff because I'm not charging you for this.
Right.
He goes, I'm like, don't ever take advice from someone that's charging you about how to get rich. And I was just like, because they haven't done it, and there's a mask going on, and it's just, and the reason I asked you the question about how did you figure out it's you first, because I think there's this gap or there's this discrepancy where you can intellectually know something, but then you can truly know something.
Yes.
And you won't change anything unless you truly know it, because you're like, no, I'm not doing that because of these reasons.
I mean, gosh, that's a really interesting. I appreciate you saying that. You know, I think you're absolutely right, because like conscious, like logical and conscious, you know, call it inner monologue or self-talk, you know, whatever we tell ourselves, you know, about how we treat ourselves, how we talk to ourselves. We can consciously say something, and we could do all the habits that I've used in waves and I'm doing okay on right now, good enough. Waking up in the morning, you know, you do your meditation, your journaling, if you do that, or you exercise. I'm a runner. I know I'm not a perfect one, but that's one of my good habits I stick to. Whatever someone's jam is that helps them get to the point of getting closer to like really understanding their why. I just challenge them to get to the point where they like really, it gets them uncomfortable. Like it gets them uncomfortable because like what I know is when I am, like, when you said expectations and reality, Ryan, and you were like talking about the closer someone can bring their expectations to reality as they're going through this process, the better this is going to go. Ultimately, like in my experience, that doesn't feel good at first. And I used to think that's a bad sign. I used to think that like, if I vision for the life I want 5 to 10 years out, and I think, oh, this is going to be really exciting. Be like, yeah, sure. The first part's going to be really exciting. But the process of talking about the sacrifices and the compromises and what you're not going to go spend time on, that's the thing that's going to make you really uncomfortable. And now I look at that as a very good sign, because this is like,
because that means you're closer to the correlation then. Yeah. Interesting.
Because one of them is a plan. The other one is a dream. And you know, the plan won't feel fuzzy all the time. The dream is a nice distraction. But the plan holds me accountable to waking up and working on stuff that I know, and more importantly, what I'm not going to do. And that, that's the hard part.
Oh, dude, like the saying no, like that's always like, I've put a very concerted effort into it over the last 12 to 18 months, and it's getting better because again, it's so damn hard. I don't know how else to put it, man. Just saying no, because I love new things, new experiences, but being focused and discipline over time. I mean, I was just talking to a client of mine, Spencer, and this guy, he took the business over from his dad and like legitimately just every day for like 3 years now has just done the hard work.
Yeah.
And he just got his goal. And like there are companies that are like 5 times the size of his that have gone nowhere.
Oh.
Because they're not trying. But he's consistently executing against his plan.
Right.
And I'm curious, like with you and Jennifer, I mean, some of the numbers that I saw when you guys sent over your cut sheet, I mean, like you guys have scaled up pretty significantly. How, as you were growing, were you shedding your, I don't know if this just came to my mind, shedding your skin, re-evolving and like, kind of like, hey, we're capable of this.
Yeah.
So the dream is like, instead of having the fuzzy dream, you're like, okay, well, this is just a basic plan. But then all of a sudden you've exceeded beyond maybe what you originally thought. How do you recalibrate?
Yeah. I'll let you know when I figure that out.
So you are human.
That's the thing is like, in all seriousness, I would argue, and I was dead serious when I said this before we started chatting today, Ryan, like we're in the middle of, I would say, probably the biggest shedding and then recalibrating that we've done thus far. And like right now, like even like this week as of this recording, and it's such a positive one because it's positive and hard. And the way we've done it all along is step one for us. Like I look at it in phases. I'm a nerdy bullet framework guy. It's too much operations in my career.
I've got my bullet journal right here, man.
Yeah, you got to do it. So 2019 is when I quit my day job. I retired from my W2 career of 13 years. That was deliberately after I had replaced around 70% of my income on my side of the household. And that took a long build up. That took a few years of build up to get to that point, hustling hard, like we were talking about earlier, on early mornings, nights, and weekends while working full time. Yeah, Jennifer is still working her career. She left her career in 2021. And because we had gotten to that point where we're like, yeah, we're good. Like we're ready. We can both focus fully on this, and the business warrants this level of complementary skills and effort and all that stuff. And we have a team now. But I look at each of those moments, like when I went off and did my own thing and Jennifer was still working full time, that was step one. I had to shed my this is my figurative skin, get into entrepreneur mode, while also figuring out how to do that and show up in the household while Jennifer was in her career. Phase two, Jennifer went through her own unique journey doing that too. And then 2021, all of a sudden, wow, we both live in the same household, work from home predominantly. We go out, I fly out around the country to go look at real estate properties and do their business and stuff. But like, other than that, suddenly 2 people with 13 years of both, like 15 years together, 11 years married. And then we're working together full time in that same household, in a business together. You talk about recalibration, like, we figured that out, and then you get to right around now and it's like, damn, this business is going well. What does going well mean for the next decade? Like let's assume that we are now going through this evaluation in a very similar way, but I would say with some more business acumen, a few thousand more relationships built along the way, serving an active investor base in our passive investing club, all this stuff, while also saying what's next. And we're approaching it very similarly, just with some more rigor, honestly. It's like sitting there going, ideal day all over again, ideal day with some new inputs.
I was gonna say, do you have like an easier time? Do you find it easier to dream now about that stuff because you've reached a certain level of that financial security?
I would say that it's easier to visualize. Yes. I would say that the work doesn't get easier. I don't know if I'm trying to articulate this correctly. The process of actually making it tangible and tie it to a plan is equally hard. I don't think that ever is going to get easier. And that makes it all the more worth doing, though, because if it was easy, then it wouldn't be probably worth doing because it's not going to stick. So like we're literally doing like 10-year horizon planning goals right now. And it's got to have principles because it also needs flexibility.
Right. Well, the flexibility, I think, is crucial. And I think one of my other questions, Spencer, and I know we're getting a little bit short on time here, is did you ever experience like a wrestling of like overextending as you've been growing the business? Because as you get good at real estate and leverage, I mean, especially with real estate leveraging up, especially over the last 3 years with money sloshing around, the ability to, finance things based on margin and whatever, like how have you stayed disciplined to not sacrifice the whole for the next thing?
Oh, honestly, I think I'm such a family first. Hopefully everyone is out there doesn't get offended if they're listening, but family first, business second. Mm-hmm. Family first, business second. And I think that, and do I always adhere to that in moments of push? No, you got to break that equation sometimes. But I would say that holding the line on that, literally getting invited on a panel a couple of years ago from a good friend of mine is a much bigger deal out here than I am. And he invites me on a panel, and the topic of the panel was, work-life balance as an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, hey, well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you think I'm pulling this off, because in the end, all the systems in place to be said, like, I think that knowing what is enough in terms of not just money, but like what is enough in terms of assets, what is enough in terms of investor or client or customer base for most folks out there, like not scaling in order purely to scale, because everyone gets bit by the vanity metric, man. Everybody does. Like pick a number, whether it's customers, whether it's top line revenue, whether it's like number of business lines, whether it's like, one of my favorite ones that I use to tout, and I think it's always going to be a rude wake-up call for anyone not trying to be offensive, number of direct reports. I am looking for the leanest possible team, and that's not because I don't like managing people. It was the best part of my professional life to date. It's also the hardest. And so it's, all those things are what trick us. They trick us into overextending.
Well said, man. And like, I like how you said that too, because they are vanity metrics, and it's like so many times, and I don't know if it's the unbelievable privilege I've had from doing this show and meeting so many people and seeing under the hood of so many things. I'm like, you're not happy. Right. You have so much more than me. Like, you're not happy. Yeah. And then it's just like, it just doesn't breed it. And so it's like, to your point, like, what are you striving for? I mean, like when Spencer, I'll do these presentations, I'm like, what's your goal? And I hear this 20 million, 50 million. I'm like, we had a $20 million business that lost $1 million. And if we sold it, we would have owed the bank money. So try me again.
Yeah.
Look at me. And they're like, and I'm like, seriously, I think that's the dumbest. I mean, it's not, obviously revenue is a part of the equation, but it's not the number.
Right.
And and this is kind of goes back to the whole point of this conversation is like thoughtful, like, what are you marching towards? And so many people, I think, just wake up and it's like, oh, I had the wrong goal for 25 years.
Oh my gosh. But so I know I'm also watching the clock, but can I just share one story of like this?
Yeah. I mean, we're on because you're the one that's going to have to go over before me. I don't have a hard cutoff. So it's up to you.
Beautiful. So real brief, like literally it's so timely. Like one of our biggest, repeat investors that we work with, I talked to him this week, and this is so relevant because it's a story he could speak to with authority as a guy who's exited 2 businesses himself. Doesn't need to work. And we have quite a few folks in our passive investing group who fit this profile. They slayed the dragon. They fought the battle, whatever you want to call it, metaphorically, corny as it sounds. Like they built something of such immense value as an entrepreneur. Different stories. One owns a construction company, 3rd generation. One of them built a e-commerce business, exited that thing. And there's just this 2 profiles. And talking to him this week revalidated this for me, right? It's the folks who you hear only this version of this story from the exited entrepreneur with enough zeros behind their net worth now, sometimes having gone through it and having it not being treated well on the other side of the exit, which is they come out with the momentum and the enthusiasm and the money of a person who just worked their ass off for a decade plus to build this thing of value, to then have all the money come back to them. And then they sit there and they go, well shit, like, what do I, sorry. They're like,
no, you're speaking my language, no pun intended. Like, you know what they do? They come back on my show and then complain. Yeah. I have 335 episodes. I mean, half of them are people like, Here's what I'd say in all these conversations, like, so you had all this purpose, all these stakeholders. I mean, conscious capital is in the book over there. I mean, that's my like mantra, man.
We have that too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so you sold your whole identity and your infrastructure. Now you got a colorful pie chart of ETFs and Charles Schwab with no purpose and no one that needs you. And they're like, oh crap. It's like no take backs. You can't like, there's no return policy for
no taking backs. Yeah. Well, and on that point, like not just that, if they, number one, unfortunately, here's what I see sometimes too, is like, I'll talk to the folks and they not only don't make it, it doesn't make it to the ETF account, by the way. Yeah. Like they say, look at all this money, let me go build a new business.
Yeah.
And it's just because they don't know what else to do. And so they take their money they just worked a decade on, they thought they were doing it for, dump it into something new. New business might not go the same way, man. And all of a sudden, where are they? And like, I hear those stories, I'm sure you do too. So if someone
personal experiences with a couple of those as well.
Yeah, and so anyways, I just wanted to share that because like the folks who actually come out the other side of that, they built the skills to build businesses, but they didn't build the skills to manage their purpose, and they didn't build the skills to necessarily do that outside of the business with their own self-identity, and they didn't necessarily build the skills to go manage the money they just got dumped on their table, because of their own hard efforts. And so those will go somewhere. I hope they go wise places, and I hope that they're planning along the way to be able to deploy that stuff, whether it's their purpose, whether it's their money, whether it's their time. So sorry for the diatribe.
No, I love it, man. So right before we wrap up, I want to kind of tie this topic together. I think there's been in typical mainstream media fashion, like this hype around find your purpose. And I can tell you, like, it's like, I would correlate to like, try to be authentic.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that an oxymoron just in itself? You can't try to be authentic. And I don't know if you like, can you try, like, how can you engineer your purpose? Like, and I don't think it's really possible. And like, I'm just curious on like what comments or thoughts or how you think about that.
Oh man, I think it's an excellent freaking question. I think that I flipped it in my own life, in my own experience. I have become such a habit frameworking guy. Like meaning, don't go out and set goals. Go out and build habit goals. All the wonderful books that exist out there that hit this far better than I'm about to try to articulate anything in a couple lines. It's like whether it's like Charles Duhigg's book, or Atomic Habits, all those books hit it so incredibly well. And so like, we are truly the sum of our habits. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up too, because at first, if I went out and said to exactly your point, Ryan, I got to go find my purpose, I don't think I'd be able to do that. Like, I don't think it would help me if I intentionally. What
does it even mean? Like, where would you even start? Right.
I've tried, I've tried that. And ultimately but here's what I do know is I know when I'm good on my habits, and I take the frameworks from people who are actually like, they're further along in life, frankly, talking to people such as like yourself, who've been through incredible experiences, not always easy ones, but you get to the other side of it with wisdom and experience. And they come out and say, just like, well, watch your calendar, right? Like, where are you allocating your time? Like where's your weekly percentages going? Are you spending that time listening and connecting with other people? Are you spending time with people who energize you? And those are the ways that I would say that I have found more purpose and able to finally get to those questions answered in my own life, is like, what's my percentage of time with people who can reciprocate, net value add, not to make it too dry and corporate.
No. But like, let me show you a trick that one of my really good friends, he was in one of our masterminds, and we've always been wrestling with this topic, and he came up with this like 5-6 years ago, or he read it somewhere, Spencer, and it was, he told us, and I still do this mentally at least, rate every interaction with someone on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as like, your feeling about it. Yeah. You can't rate it a 7.
But you can't rate it a 7?
Because 7's a non-answer, right? So it's like, I don't know, man. Was this an enjoyable experience for you? Scale of 1 to 10, no 7. It's like, well, because an 8's like positive and a 6 is not. So pretty much it's just like a binary. I mean, like, you could have real terrible or real great, but like you're trying to get away from like the non-answer. And I'm like, God, that is so great.
I mean, you could even, I love that because you could even just go for the straight up, upside down.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the thumbs up, thumbs up. Yeah, exactly.
Forcing a true reflection on that interaction on both sides, I think that's brilliant. But I would say to that end, like in those moments where I don't feel that I'm ready to show up in a way that is net value add for any person in my life, we're all humans, man. I'm human. I don't track this in the spreadsheet, but like there are many things I do, but not that. And it's interesting. I would say if I'm not prepared to go show up, I use the same principle that I heard from a really hardcore VP back in my corporate career, who I'll never forget because he was pretty mean, but I learned a lot from him. Which was like, Spencer, if you're not going to show up well to a meeting, you do not go to that meeting. Yeah, and I thought that was freaking brilliant. And in life, you have a choice. Whether people think it or not, they do. A lot of them do. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you're not going to show up well, think about how you're going to, reschedule. Think about what, and more importantly, why are you not going to show up well, and go solve that first.
Bingo. Yeah, dude. And it's taken me a lot of misery and hard work and time to figure that out. Where it's like that, to your point. I mean, how many sales calls back in my day, like at the last business, like I'm going to do myself a disservice if I didn't if I went to this meeting, I would do myself a disservice. But to your point, why am I not feeling on my game?
Right. Exactly.
And I don't think a lot of people do that kind of reflection. And like, it's so important to me now that like I spend so much time analyzing why I'm not on my game.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's just like, what the hell's the point? I'm just doing myself. I'm just running for no reason.
Oxygen mask, man. It just needs to go on, and it's the health, it's the mental health, it's all that wonderful stuff, and the connection with others. So that's awesome.
Spencer, this has been so much fun, man. I know we're a couple minutes over for your timeline, but so 2 final questions for you. The first one is, I'm going to do a different order now. The word intentional. I love to hear people's definition, especially after this conversation. What is your definition of the word intentional?
It's self-awareness. Starts with self-awareness. And moving forward towards something you've decided on.
Oh, dude, love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I really do. And then the last one is, where can people find you?
Yeah. They can find me on madisoninvesting.com. That's our company website for our Passive Investor Club. I'm also on LinkedIn. And so I took a little break for about a solid year, but I'm usually on there very active, and I'm back on there now. And so, I am very available on both those.
Spencer, thanks so much for spending the time with me, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've had a blast. Thank you so much, Ryan.